So my name's Sarah Markham. I'm the manager of the adult MASH for Suffolk County Council, and I'm here to just talk a little bit about the Suffolk Safeguarding Framework, how it was developed, and we're going to look a little bit about how to use it. I was fortunate, were we fortunate enough to be part of putting together the framework with one of my colleagues, Nicola Bennett, and some colleagues within Police and Health. I say were we fortunate because it was a really difficult thing to do because we wanted to do it in partnership. So I'm just going to start by talking a little bit about what it is, where it came from. So safeguarding, everybody's business, we've heard that I don't know how many times today. It is the business of every professional, every neighbour, every friend to look out for those warning signs, those triggers of things that are happening with people that we know. And as Margaret was saying, the people that you know best that things are not quite right. So it's everybody's responsibility. And for all of us to work together so that we can make safeguarding plans for people really effective and have really kind of positive outcomes. And it's also about doing things at that right time. And that's what we wanted the framework to achieve, really, is it would be a tool for professionals to use to be able to do the right thing at the right time for somebody. Not always wait for somebody else to go and do something with it, i.e. referrals put in and you're waiting for something to happen. So it was developed, as I said, is in a multi-agency forum. I'm trying to remember how long it took. I think it was probably getting on for a year of sitting in a room regularly and really talking about the nuances in language and our cultures within health, within provider services, within police and within social care. We consulted widely with people when we did it. I've just realised I haven't even moved the slide on, sorry. Can't multitask. So yeah, we consulted widely with people. We took a lot of those comments and put them into the framework. There were some that we didn't, and we fed back to people the reasons why we didn't feel that we could put those into the framework. We also got some legal advice to make sure the document was legally literate. And we looked at recent reviews and recommendations from those reviews. The document is also fundamental to making sure it is the safeguarding process. The person is central to that process. So the kind of making safeguarding personal, the document is made for that. It's also not to replace some of the other documents that people have got. Some people have got their own policies and procedures. It's to assist with that. It doesn't mean you could say you've got to go and throw your own documents in the bin. It was based on a model from Oxfordshire, which they do know about. So we always do mention it. It integrates within the 6 safeguarding principles, and it absolutely supports the Mental Capacity Act. So, like I said earlier, it was about consistent terminology and language. What we realised quite quickly when we were putting the document together, that a particular word in social care may mean something completely different to police colleagues. So we needed to make sure that we were all talking the same language and that we found a word that would work for everybody. So hence the painstaking year. We wanted it to be simple and easy to use. We didn't want something that people went, oh, I don't know how to use that. It's just too complicated and throw it aside. We wanted it to focus on safeguarding being everybody's business so that you could pick up that document and it would assist you in making your decision at that time. The other thing we wanted it to address was the care quality issues. There was a time when a lot of care quality issues did come to safeguarding and they could have been dealt with within internal processes. So we wanted to kind of look at what made it tip into safeguarding, and that is still a challenge and will always be a challenge because it's a very fine line. We wanted it to clarify what different people's roles and responsibilities are. And we wanted to have enough information in it to be able to tell people if your worry is not necessarily safeguarding, what else can you do with it? So I will show you in a little while of some of the other bits that are inside it. Is anybody, I know some people in the room have used it. Yeah. Good. Right, again, doing the right thing at the right time, making safeguarding personal and positive action. Positive action for, I don't know if there's any police officers still in the room, is a police terminology mainly around domestic abuse. But it's just thinking about those balances really of making sure that you're doing whatever the individual wants, but balancing that with some positive action that you might need to take because that individual at that time is unable to make those decisions for themselves. That often relates to domestic abuse, but other situations as well. And it's a fine line, and it's something in the MASH we're balancing all the time of, no, I don't want anything done about it, and looking at the risks to the individual. Okay, so we'll move on to the actual document, front page. So this is one of the first pages, and this describes the legislation that we work under. So the legislation for safeguarding for adults is the Care Act 2014, Section 42(1) and Section 42(2). So that's what we're looking at. The arrow then describes the 3 statutory criteria in which somebody would be deemed as someone that an adult at risk, and that we could consider doing a Section 42 inquiry for. So it's around the person having care and support needs, whether their needs are being met at that time or not. You have reasonable cause to suspect there is a risk of or experiencing abuse and neglect, and as a result of those care and support needs, you're unable to protect yourself. So it may be that you can protect yourself in other ways, but that particular instance, you're not able to protect yourself because of that. That all looks very clear, and then it starts to get a bit more unclear. We do need to be mindful of carers, people that are caring for people with care and support needs that may be harming the caring person. We have most definitely seen a significant increase in carers, especially where we've been over the last couple of years, with people locked in houses. They can't get out. All their support networks have gone, and you've got caring responsibilities that are just not tenable anymore. And we also need to be mindful of people that are victims of domestic abuse or modern slavery who are in receipt of care and support. And then you get the little bit at the bottom that says that the local authority can undertake inquiries for those people that don't meet that statutory criteria. So we don't, in Suffolk, do a huge amount of these, but these may be a group of people that are not necessarily got very straightforward care and support needs, but another example of domestic abuse where there is significant enough risk for us to think we want to intervene, we want to see if we can support that person. So yeah, it's clear, but then it becomes unclear. Okay, this is our little triangle. Apologies, I was trying to do the presentation and I couldn't get the logo off this one. It's our old logo of the adults board, but I'm going to work on that. This is kind of how we saw it when we looked at the framework, that the majority of concerns can be dealt with through kind of local management, care quality type interventions. Then you have like a bulk of concerns where you're just like, don't know, what should I do with these? And then you've got the kind of the top of the triangle where you go, oh yeah, that's definitely safeguarding. I know that I need to refer it. We do find increasingly that amber strip becomes bigger and bigger, especially with some of the complexity of work at the moment. So it's set out, I mean, I have put some out on your tables and the little mini guides, but it's set out in those kind of 4 sections. This is not an incremental thing where, oh, it's getting a little bit worse, it's getting worse, oh, it's safeguarding. What we tried to do when we wrote it is look at the language that we put in each section and put very, very different language in the reportable safeguarding concerns. So you've got, your local management, which could be an individual that maybe just needs some additional care and support at home, can be arranged through social care or a provider. You've got your care quality concerns within supported living projects and residential homes where you have kind of disciplinary type issues. Then we have our requires consultation. The consultation, we kind of wanted it to be seen as kind of a bit of a layered approach as well, because we know that most organisations have got really good specialist safeguarding leads within their organisation that can support their own workers. We do have the MASH consultation line, which is now, it separates when, I don't know if anybody's phoned it recently, but it separates from children, adults and health now. Health is a new bit where we try and target those calls towards our health practitioners. But there is kind of a bit of a layered approach where you have your safeguarding concern, you can consult with your document, you don't know what to do still. You can go to your safeguarding lead or your manager, whoever, and discuss it through with them. You might then know what you can do with that concern, or you can come to the MASH consultation line. But yeah, it's not to disregard your own leads within your organisation and the skills that they have. So this is just an example of one of the pages. This is the one around indicators of neglect and acts of omission. Within the document, this has got about 4 pages because there is so many issues around possible neglect. What we've tried to do is to put not examples as such or scenarios on here, because people try and then look at your example and think, oh, it's not that, it's not that. So they're just examples to make you think about the type of things that might fit in within that particular box, if you like. What we have through the middle of each page is around the making safeguarding personal. So that's our grey, but it should be our golden thread that goes through all of the document, that it is absolutely essential that the person is central to the process right from the beginning. Right from that, I'm worried about you. Speak to the person and say, I'm worried about you. And it's incredible how much we find out in the MASH with people that are referred in that don't know they've been referred in. And we phone them up and say, you've been referred for this particular concern. And they can just tell you all about what it is. And you're like, oh, that's not a worry then. But people just see something sometimes and just take it away and go, I need to refer that in, I need to do something, rather than actually speaking to the individual, which will 9 times out of 10 set your path of where you've got to go. It will really help you use this document if you've just got their view. Or if they're not able to give a view, their representative. Margaret talked this morning about the importance of family and representatives. And I know it's not always the case, because some of the cases it's family we're talking about, but yeah, just think about their network and speak to the most appropriate person. In the bottom of every page is also some other documentation that might be useful to that particular concern that you have. So there's other policies, other procedures and things that you can go and have a look at. Things like the purple books for care homes. This is a live document. The best place to go and get this document, that's why I didn't print that many off, because I didn't want to kill too many trees for no reason. It's a live document that sits on the Safeguarding Partnership website, and it is updated quite regularly. One of the reasons we update it and keep it live is because of these support services that we've also got within the document, of other places that you can go. So if you're thinking of domestic abuse, thinking about IDFAs, thinking about Mankind, places like that, where you can point people that maybe don't want to have a safeguarding referral, they want to look at other agencies to support them. They change on a fairly regular basis, and we kind of welcome people's feedback to say, that's gone now, because things are changing all the time. Or here's a new service. If you know of a new service that's not in there, please do contact the Partnership Board, and it can get added to the document. We do obviously print them out, and the new mini guides, this is the second iteration of the mini guide. Not that many changes, but a few that we've learnt from using the document for the past couple of years, that we've had feedback that it doesn't particularly steer you in the right direction. I think financial concerns was one of them. So yeah, we do update that. We also included in there a glossary of terms, appreciating that there's all sorts of weird words for different things. I mean, cuckooing, I think everybody knows what that is now, but when we first wrote the document, people were like, what is that? And again, it was also about us as professionals, when we wrote the document, having a shared understanding of what does battery mean? What does care quality mean? So that we all understood that, and we're all coming from the same place when we're going out and we're sharing this document with our nurses, doctors, care providers. So we've got some scenarios that I thought we could just have a quick look at. We can just do kind of 5 or 10 minutes on a table. For those people that are at home, I will leave this scenario up so you can just have a bit of thought about it. And then I've got 25 minutes, and then we can just come back and go through some of those scenarios. If anyone has a particular case that they're thinking of that they'd rather look at on your table and just get some views from other people and look at the document about where you think that would kind of sit, then please do. Yeah, we just want to make sure it's the most beneficial. So 25 minutes, and long. Right. How many tables have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4. If you could just have a look at the scenario, have a look at your frameworks, and just think about where you would be looking at, what abuse types you'd be looking at, what you'd be thinking about within that. If we just do that just for 5 minutes, very quick, and then we can come back. Sorry? Time, but we've only got, I think, about another 15 minutes. Are we okay to just come back and just have a talk about each of the case studies? Everyone's really engrossed. I know, Pete, you haven't had enough time to go through them. It's just about having a little bit of a go, but we've only got 15 minutes, and it'd be good to just kind of talk through them a bit. Yes, please.
Want to hear from people,
yeah. So We have had one question that's come through on the online around what does MASH stand for. Apologies for saying MASH. It's the Multi-Agency Safeguarding Hub for Suffolk County Council for children and adults. Our referral route is through our customer first, and then referrals come into the MASH and are triaged by police, social care and health. And decisions made around whether we look at Section 42 or Section 47 legislation and inquiries. So I hope that's answered that question. So we'll do scenario 1 to start with, Fred. Who did Fred? Anybody do Fred? No? You talked,
Okay.
Okie doke.
We didn't even get to the point of actually looking at the framework, I'm afraid.
Is there anything you want to share about that situation that the framework could have assisted with, doesn't assist with?
I think probably, I don't want to speak for you, sorry. I think what we were saying was that it's a long, ongoing situation and it's something that's chronic. And it's like, at what point do you go, I now need to do a new referral?
Yeah.
Has the situation changed? Have we got to the point perhaps where, I think thinking about the professional curiosity from earlier, have we normalised that situation actually? So I think what we were about to do, if we'd had a bit more time, was say, okay, let's have a look at a couple of the pages on the framework and see whether it fitted and actually is it a chance now to escalate that situation because it perhaps has been normalised, and picking out the bits in the framework to say, actually, I think they are being financially abused and neglected.
Yeah, and I think that is really important, isn't it? And it does go back to what other people have been saying around if you're, I don't know, provider, I guess that's where the scenario comes from, you know that person well and you know what's right and you've seen it keep happening. And all I would say is when you refer in, when you think, actually, it is time now, this has happened on so many occasions, when you refer in, give us that detail. So we know that this is not the first time it's happened. This has been happening for like the last 2 years. But yeah, it is a tricky one, isn't it? And certainly within the MASH, I mean, we're steering off a little bit on the from the framework, but in the MASH, what we do, and that was something we put in place after one of the reviews, is if somebody refers in, if we have a referral in for an individual and we look at our framework, because we use this only on the triage and when they come in, and think, no, it's not safeguarding at this point. If we do that 3 times, then it puts an alert on our system now to say, you need to review this because you've had the same thing 3 times. We can see, obviously, that record, but the pace sometimes we work in, we just need sometimes a bit of a slap in the face to say this is the 3rd time. Okay, so I'll just quickly go through scenario 1 for those people who are at home. So Fred, 84-year-old, living with dementia and reside in a residential home. You're a visiting social worker, you witness Fred hitting somebody, another resident, and you speak to the other staff member and they say, oh, this is Fred whose behaviour, he's doing this all the time. So some of the considerations, what type of abuse would we be looking at here? Have you spoken to the manager, the senior on duty, to verify that information? Has the manager already taken some action? Don't assume Fred doesn't have insight into his behaviour just because he's living with dementia. So, types of abuse we'll be looking at? Could be, yeah. We could be looking at institutional or organisational, as we have in our Care Act terminology now. What other abuse type within the framework would you look at? Physical. Yeah, so I've lost my microphone person.
Yeah, sorry, that's
That's right. Poor Sadie's trying to answer the online questions and do a bit of everything. Acts, neglect and acts of omission. It could be the phrase from the carer about this happens all the time. So we will be looking at physical abuse, neglect, acts of omission. The outcome of this particular case was the social worker went to the manager, discussed what she'd witnessed. The manager was then able to explain that this particular chap had been a bit unwell. He'd been given some antibiotics. It wasn't his usual behaviour. The member of staff that they'd spoken to was an agency member of staff. And I think that's a really important point. Again, after where we've been and we still are, a lot of providers are having to use agency staff, and they may have only just landed there that morning and they may not be the best person to give you all the information. The manager was able to share that file, and which evidenced that this wasn't something that was happening on a regular basis. And so they'd looked at the framework and said, we don't need a safeguarding referral. The individual was spoken to, or the individual's family in this case was spoken to. They didn't come to any real harm. It was kind of just a slap on the arm rather than anything really nasty, which was fortunate. So they were doing everything that they could. Scenario 2. Anyone do scenario 2? So Jodie, any thoughts around Jodie?
Sorry. We went down the route of modern slavery and financial.
And what kind of considerations did you have? What kind of thoughts did you have that took you?
Yeah, the thoughts came back to her upbringing, so her traumas from previous years. She'd been reported as a missing person, so why was that? And conversations around, had she gone to London of free will or had she gone for some other reason? The neighbours' complaints about drug-related concerns, so we started thinking of cuckoo, which kind of took us into the modern slavery. And then, the housing officer also had the concerns because she appeared vulnerable. When you start to put all those bits of the jigsaw together, it starts to come up with adult at risk.
Thank you. So, I think you've covered a lot of those. I think it was really important what you were saying about Jodie and her trauma, and that is certainly one thing that we're seeing a lot more of, is those young adults that have gone through care systems, and they may not have any obvious care and support needs, but it's most likely they are going to have care and support needs as a result of some of the trauma and the interventions in their earlier life. And speaking to Jodie, does she feel safe? What are her views on the situation? Going back to Matt's presentation, to not have that insight into what's happening and thinking this is a perfectly normal relationship that I've got here. So we were looking at financial and material abuse and absolutely modern day slavery. There was a referral submitted. During that inquiry, she disclosed she'd been taken to London and given a ticket to return home with drugs. So absolutely modern day slavery. She couldn't identify any of the people other than nicknames, so they weren't friends, they were acquaintances she knew of. The police investigation did cease because Jodie didn't want to engage with that, but through looking at other support networks, a lot of which are in the framework, people were able to continue working with Jodie, and it will be an ongoing piece of work with Jodie. She's not suddenly going to be making good relationships. It will be ongoing. So I'm whizzing through these. Scenario 3. Anyone do 3? Yes? Oh.
Yeah, group at the back.
Run, Sadie,
the
run.
furthest group from me. Who's gonna? Yeah, okay. So we, we had this one, and we were speaking about it might. Sorry, do you want me to just read that first, or?
I think, well, people at home can see that, so I think just what your thoughts were would be great, thanks.
Yeah, so we thought this might fall under neglects of active omission, possibly organisational abuse. We wanted to know ultimately what harm came to the patient as a result of missing these medications, if there was any long-term impact. We wanted to know what the care home's management plan had been previously, when there had been a previous concern raised about missed medications, and what action they had taken from there. So what had they not done this time that something else had resulted in it, trying to identify what caused the problem, and then what their plan was going from there. We wanted to know if it had been raised as a potential safeguarding referral, either for this individual patient, had they come to harm, but perhaps against themselves as a care home. Had it been raised with the CQC as well as raised as a concern? Anything else?
And that's why you're a safeguarding lead. So, with this situation, I think all of those have been mentioned. I think it's important within this scenario is to think about the requires consultation. And as Rose has just said, about kind of gathering that intelligence. And sometimes as individual professionals, you don't have that. And in this instance, we were looking at neglects and acts of omission with medication errors, but we did receive a referral. And that enabled us to really kind of collate that information, because the GP himself was saying, yeah, I know about this. Are there any others? It wasn't a particular environment where you have one GP for the whole home, so there could have been other GPs. So we collected kind of some information. We went through the MASH process. We do have part of our recording system that gathers intelligence around our providers, our hospitals, so that we can see if there are some patterns emerging where we're that kind of the windscreen wipers going from care quality to there's some real safeguarding concerns that could constitute organisational abuse. We didn't find any other concerns. So once we'd kind of done that information sharing, we were happy that we did then inform our service development and contracts team within the local authority, because they go out to some of the providers and they may need to support them in the future around how their medications. Right, scenario 4. Got 3 minutes.
Oh, this table, did you want to?
So this is Simon and Joan.
We've got one table here.
Oh, hello.
That was a really secret hand that went up. I started it.
Yeah, we did this one. We would be thinking about, does Simon have his own care needs? This is a snapshot. Was he throwing his walking stick down or at her? What is Joan feeling about it? Is she scared? We looked at, he's been caring for a long time. So we looked at domestic abuse and physical abuse, it was, is she in an immediate danger? Is she able to be left in this situation? He needs help. She needs help. So yes, we put in a referral.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I went too fast. They were. 6 years of caring, and he's obviously getting carer's burnout and getting very frustrated. And if he's not getting any care, he needs help, he needs respite, she needs respite,
Yeah.
etc., etc.
So I think
It was the end bit about wishing they were dead that was the final thing that we said. Needs to be referred.
Yeah, absolutely. The desperation in that, and one of the I think important bits in this is to look at the area of domestic abuse, and I think this often gets missed, and it's quite a delicate kind of subject within caring environments that. It is domestic abuse. It's even if it's carer breakdown and someone has been assaulted, it is still domestic abuse. It's how we respond to that is important. And again, another thing that is most definitely on the increase with some of our carers really struggling at the moment, and having that, what we saw earlier, the scales of balancing that positive action with people's own wishes and choices. And yeah, again, it's how we respond to it. And hopefully what we're able to do in the MASH is package it up nicely with, it would have to be a joint inquiry, but package it up nicely so we're not having our police officers in uniform or anything turn up, and that positive action may be that the social worker or a care provider that knows them really well could do some of that initial work and give those reassurances to police colleagues that some action's been taken. Right, did I just do scenario 4? Yeah. Right, forget what that number is. Did anyone do the district nurse who spoke with Simon? No, that's random. Sorry, that's right, let's move on to Joel. That's me doing the slides at a ridiculous speed yesterday. Anybody do Joel? Anything you want to
Is there anything
talk about with
you
Joel?
want to share, or kind of it was a half hand?
We said that we need to obviously look at the amount of occasions that this is happening and what has been done about it already, and safeguard obviously those residents from Joel. We said about him probably having some one-to-one input to just try and manage and keep him occupied, because he obviously doesn't do things independently. So doing sort of activities with somebody one-on-one would just kind of keep him occupied. And yes, we'd put a referral in for obviously those residents that he's sexually assaulting.
Okay, so what areas of the framework would you be looking at when you're making that decision?
Physical and sexual abuse. Yeah.
So, any others?
Yeah, because if we said so, organisational abuse because of not getting necessarily the input that he's needed to keep him occupied. He's obviously wandering around and able to do these things freely within the home.
Obviously referrals to other services that could support with the disinhibited behaviour that he has, and education for the carers, because there was a what does it say? Oh, he's a ladies' man. Yeah, the language that the carers were using. Oh, he's a ladies' man. So it was like they were justifying the behaviour that he had instead of referring to the people that he needed.
Thank you. So yeah, the thinking about what support he has in place. Did he have a one-to-one? So thinking about whether there was any services that should have been in place that weren't in place. So looking at that aspect of neglect, what his care package says, how many other incidents have there been, were they reported? So you're then starting to think about, is this an organisational concern? What manager's response to those instances was. In this particular case, as you say, sexual abuse and organisational neglect and acts of omission, he was deemed to have no insight into his actions. There were 9 other incidents noted in Joel's notes, none of which had been reported before. There was no evidence on his file to say that risk assessments had been put in place or amended or anything. The manager had left a week previously and the deputy was standing in, so they've had that instability there. during the visit, it was noted that it was also quite chaotic within the environment. Staff seemed to be really stressed and struggling to manage. There were call bells going that weren't getting answered very quickly. So a referral was submitted, and after information sharing, we looked at the increased concerns that had been coming in about that particular provider, and an organisational Section 42 inquiry was initiated, and the central safeguarding team in Suffolk worked with the provider for 5 months to support change. And that is something that I do want to just kind of say, is that the central safeguarding team do work with providers for quite considerable time, because their aim is to support them to turn that around, especially now with an increase in providers that are really, really struggling. We can't ignore the safeguarding concerns that are going on, but we can try and point them in the right direction, try and support them and get them to have their action plans about improving. Am I running over time? Yeah. Does anyone mind if we skip the last scenario? I think we've talked through quite a bit. So unless you particularly want to. As I said, there is MASH professional consultation line. That's not your only point of consultation, because you've got your own networks as well. So do use your own networks. If you're not sure, come to us. What I would say is it's not kind of a rubber stamp line. We do have some people that come to the consultation line, and what we do with people when they phone is we go through the framework with them. Have you seen it? Have a look at it. So if you're going to phone, have your framework in front of you so you can go through it with us. Some people do phone and say, I know it's not safeguarding, but I want it recorded. You don't need to do that. We're not the police. You can just record it in your own records, and that's enough. So yeah, consultation line. There is some online learning around the framework that you can access through the Partnership Board website. It's not very long at all, is it? It's about half an hour, really quick. So if you could get people to do the online training, it'd be great. There is also a video on there now as well, which was done by one of our providers in how the framework supports them. Questions, feedback, or if not, I'll pass to Nicola. Yeah.
Sorry, you're not commissioning the safeguarding training anymore for managers. Is there any training available apart from outside of obviously Suffolk or external providers?
There is still some on CPD, isn't there, Nicola?
No.
None at all now.
No.
On a training theme, when we did launch the framework, what we did is like a kind of train the trainer. So there are people out there that can also do some training. Train the trainer.
You know the one. Yeah, so there's the adult and children's train the trainer safeguarding package as well. And then once you've done that, you get then an annual update, which is like a day like today, but on a sort of more workshop, smaller scale, where you get like more sort of chances to have smaller case discussions and stuff on various kind of topics. So that's through Suffolk and CPD.